This is a shiur on Likutei Sichas Chelek Ches, book number 28, Sicha 2 of Pinchas. And the Sicha takes us on a journey. We don't go too far because we stay with the daily korban. And the pasuk Tzavis Bnei Yisrael instructed Bnei Yisrael Amar to them, tell them, korban ilach milishai, that my korban, my bread, fire offering, reach nichochi, this sweet fragrance. Remember, whenever it says by korban that it's a reach nichoch, it's a sweet smell. It's not that Hashem, God forbid, likes barbecued meat, but it's nachat ruach lefanesh hamarti v'naser etzoini. Hashem has pleasure that He gives instructions and His will is fulfilled. That's the point of the korban. Something is done for Hashem precisely according to the instructions He has given. At any rate, here we're talking about lahakriv li b'mayadai tishmeru. You must ensure, you must protect, guard. Lahakriv li, to offer up for me this sacrifice b'mayadai in its appointed time. Rashi comments on the words b'mayadai in its appointed time, and he says b'chol yom u'mayad hatamimim. Every day is the time of the tamidim, of the constant korban. This korban is called a korban tamid, the constant korban, because it's brought as a constant every single day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Now we have to understand, what does Rashi mean by these, what would seem to be cryptic words? Every day is the moed, is the time of the tamidim to bring the constant korban. What is Rashi alluding to? So here the Rabbi asks, what is Rashi adding about what we've already said in the pasuk beforehand? I mean, the pasuk said, "Shnaim layom ala tamid," that we bring him twice a day as a burnt offering, tamid, in a way of consistency. In other words, every day, too, morning and evening. So we understand that it's a consistent korban, constant, every day, daily. So why does Rashi add what doesn't seem to really add any meaning, that b'chol yom moedu, that each day is its time? We just said before, pasuk before said, every day you have to bring it, morning and evening. So we understand that's the time you have to bring it. What does Rashi add? So the Re'aim was Rabbi Mizrahi, one of the foremost commentators on Rashi. So he says that Rashi comes to say, Rashi is not trying to tell you that this is every day the proper time is, in other words, it's a daily mitzvah. We know that already. The pasuk says openly it's a daily mitzvah. But what is Rashi trying to tell us? That every single day is its appointed time and nothing can stop it. Nothing can get in the way of the korban, even if there's impurity. A korban that's an elective korban, that's a choice by the owner of the korban to bring it. If there's tumah, you don't bring it. But a korban that needs to be brought at a particular time, so to use the language of the world, by hook or by crook, then it doesn't matter if there's tumah, not tumah. The tumah will get pushed aside because its appointed time is every day. You got to bring it, rain or shine, tumah, impurity or not impurity. However, that would be very difficult to say that was Rashi is trying to tell you, because Rashi had already wrote for a 5-year-old. He already told us in a very clear language earlier on that the tamidim, the korban, the constant korban has to be brought even in tumah. Sorry. Reverse. Rashi writes his pirush. To be clear, even for a 5-year-old, so if that is what Rashi wanted to tell the 5-year-old, that the time of the korban tamid is so necessary that even if there's impurity, it pushes away the impurity and the korban is brought, he should have said that. Like he tells us this already about the Korban Pesach in Parshas Baha'aloischa, several parshas back, towards the beginning of the book of Bamidbar, when it says that the Korban Pesach has to be brought b'mo'ado, in its proper time. He says, even if it's in a state of tumah. So he could have said that here. Rashi knows how to say that fact, if he wants to say that. He didn't say it. Also,
af b'Shabbat.
Huh?
af b'Shabbat.
Yeah, sorry. Af b'Shabbat, af b'tumah. Even if it comes out on Shabbos, yeah. Rashi knows how to say it. Elsewhere, he has stated that openly. If that's what he meant here, he would have said it openly. Also, we have to understand why Taka. Why doesn't Rashi say here, like what he says about the Korban Pesach, that the word B'ma'ado tells you Even if it's Shabbos, we usually remember you can't usually bring a carbon on Shabbos. An elective carbon can't be brought on Shabbos. But in this case, it's at proper time. It has to be brought also on Shabbos, also on Tumah. Why doesn't Rashi say that? And even though when it comes to Shabbos, perhaps we can say Rashi doesn't need to tell you a special teaching because right after this instruction about bringing the daily carbon, it speaks about the Musaf of Shabbos, and it says, Olat Shabbat b'Shabbato, that you bring the fire, the burnt offering every Shabbos, Shabbos by Shabbos, and the Torah says, Al Olat Atamid, in addition to the regular Olah. So when it comes to Shabbos, the Pasuk openly says it in the next Pasuk. But what about Tumah? Rashi should have told us that even if there's impurity, because this is a daily carbon that needs to be brought daily, so therefore it pushes aside even impurity.
Amen.
Paragraph 2. The Ibn Ezra does give a teaching on this word b'mayada in its time. What does he say? That it has to be brought in its time, which is don't bring the carbon, don't bring it earlier than morning, and don't bring it later than the beginning of night in the afternoon. That would give a simple explanation what the pasuk means.
Okay.
You have to bring the carbon in its appointed time, even though it says in the pasuk openly 2 a day as a constant burnt offering, and make 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, because yes, the Torah tells us the time later on, but here the word b'moado would be a very strong statement that its time must be as stated without deviating. In other words, sometimes there can be a suggested time when you follow it up and say b'moado, that would say that no, this is non-negotiable.
That's a mashal.
To say that it has to be not too early and not too late. However, we require explanation. That seems to be a very simple pshat. And remember, the Ibn Ezra is also one of those that we call Pashtanei HaMikra, one of those commentaries that gives the simple reading of the pasuk. So why doesn't Rashi just take the word b'moado and translate it like the Ibn Ezra, that it has to be in its time, not too early in the morning, not too late in the evening? But Rashi doesn't do that. Rashi brings in a cryptic statement, and he says that B'chol yom hu moed hatmimim. Every day is the appointed time for the tmidim, for the constant carbon. What is he trying to tell us? Paragraph 3. So we could say the explanation is as follows. The difference between this Rashi, which takes the word b'moado and does not say what Rashi says in Ba'alotcha, that in its time, even Shabbos, even Tumah. Why is there a difference? Because in Parshas Ba'alo Yitzchak, Rashi comes to explain the addition of the word b'moado in its time. It seems that word seems redundant because the pasuk right away says it has to be on the 14th day of this month in the afternoon. So why does it first say bring it in its time? The pasuk is about to say what the time is. So don't say you got to bring the carbon pesach in its proper time on the 14th day. Just say you got to bring the carbon pesach on the 14th day. Why say on the proper time, stop, and then start saying when the proper time is? So that's why Rashi takes the word there, b'moado, in its proper time, and it says, this word b'moado is telling you something you wouldn't have known. It's not telling you when the time is. It's telling you whenever I'm about to tell you that the time is, this is the time, and nothing's going to get in the way of it. Not Shabbos and not impurity. However, in our parsha, Rashi wants to know, what does the word b'moado mean? B'moado in its simplest sense is, in the time that we have said it has to be brought. Right? Like Rashi explains elsewhere, the word lamoed, according to that time which we fixed. So if that's the case, when we're talking about the sacrifices of Shabbos, or Rosh Chodesh, or the regalim, the holidays, those karbanis do come from time to time. So I would understand that when we talk about those karbanis, you have to bring them in their proper time. It's not every day. It's either every Shabbos, every Rosh Chodesh, or every 15th of Nisan, right? Every carbon has its time, but in the daily carbon, there's no special time. It's a constant. It's every day. Why would you say you have to bring me the carbon in its proper time? Is there any time that it's not proper? It's every day. So that's why Rashi doesn't want to learn like the Even Ezer, that Even Ezer says, don't bring it too early, don't bring it too late, because in the Even Ezer's translation, the word b'moado is not talking about the carbon, it's talking about the timing of the carbon, not to bring it too early, not to bring it too late. You don't need to say the word, it doesn't fit to use the word b'moado in its proper time. That's not a special thing for the carbon tamid. In other words, this concept that it has to be only after sunrise and only up till sunset is actually not even something particular to the carbon tamid. Even the Musaf of Shabbos, same thing. You can't. So to use this as saying b'moado that this is the special time for the carbon tamid, the daily carbon, that translation doesn't really fit so well to explain why the Torah inserts this word b'moado.
מה, טעה? הוא טעה?
Ibn Ezra? Ibn Ezra didn't ta. It fits. The thing is that Rashi is trying to go with the simplest meaning of the word b'moado for the 5-year-old. To say that it means a halacha about the carbon tamid, which is a side issue, whereas all the other carbonis, when it says b'moado its time, it's saying you got to bring the Pesach offering in its time. It means to say at a particular time. Here, the word b'moado all of a sudden takes on a different meaning. Not that you have to bring in its time every day is its time. You have to bring it in that day itself, not too early, not too late. By all the other carbonis, it just meant to say bring it on that date. Here, that doesn't fit because every day is its date. So the Even Ezra Rashi doesn't go with the Even Ezra. Also, it doesn't make sense in the simple Pshutei Shamrika to say like the Even Ezra, because then the word b'moado would have to be after the Torah says when it's supposed to be offered up, Shnaim layom olat tamid, after it tells you that you have to bring 2 a day, 1 baboker, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. Then it should have said that bring it b'moado in its proper time. What does morning mean? Not too early, not before sunrise. What does afternoon mean? Not too late, not after sunset, right? But the Torah doesn't say b'moado after it tells you boker and erev. It says if you listen to the pasuk, it says et korbani lachmin lishai tishmerak lahakev li b'moado. It's just a blanket introduction at the beginning. Bring my carbon in its time. And then it says, tell them, this is the carbon you should bring. Shnaim layom, et hakeves tasev boker. Bring it in the morning. Bring the other one in the afternoon. If the word b'moado is coming to talk about morning and afternoon, it should have been placed after the Torah spells out the details, morning and afternoon. It's placed beforehand, kind of as a general instruction about the Talmud, before we even say morning and evening.
אולי זה הסבר, אבל מה במועדו? ועכשיו אני אסביר לך מה זה במועדו.
But then the moado is not really clarifying what is boker, what is erev. You're saying boker and erev is clarifying what moado means. The Even Ezra's pshat is saying moado is clarifying what is morning, what is afternoon, not too early, not too late. So in Pashup Pshat, it doesn't fit so well. So the Even Ezra can learn it, even though he's a Pashtun. He learns Pashup Pshat, but it's not as Pashut as, he doesn't stick as radically to the Pshat like Rashi. So from the fact that the Torah first says b'moado as an introduction to the whole concept of the carbon tamid, even before it gives you the exact timing, morning and afternoon, so we understand that b'moado speaks somehow about the etzem zman, about the actual time of the carbon tamid, not the details of morning and afternoon, but what is its proper timing? So Rashi says that it's telling you that every day is the actual time of the Tamid. So there's somehow some new classification, some new title, description that the Torah is placing on the time of when you bring the carbon Tamid. Let's understand. Because you would learn simply that the carbon tamid is a constant sacrifice, which is not similar to all other carbonas. All the other ones come only at unique and special times. It comes at the Yom Tov. This tamid is a constant, doesn't have a special time. It's every single day. And that's why it's called olat tamid. It's a constant olah. So Rashi says, don't look at it that way, as if it's a constant. But the other karbanis come in, jump in at certain dates. This is a constant. Says Rashi that the word b'mado tells you that every day is its time. Like there's a Pesach once a year, there's a Tamid once a day, twice a day. It's not that it doesn't have any time, it's just, a glob, one glob across the whole year. No, no, no. It has 365 times. Each day is its moed, just like the moed of Shabbat is Shabbat. The moed of the Korban Tamid is every single day. L'may nafka mina, paragraph 4, what's the difference? Which just seems to be a play on words, right? What's the difference, says the Rebbe? So we understand simply what's the difference. Later in this very parsha, when we talk about the carbon of Shabbos, Rashi says, on the words that it says, Olat Shabbat b'Shabbato, that the burnt offering of this Shabbos has to be brought on this Shabbos. Says Rashi, this Shabbos on this Shabbos, v'lo Olat Shabbat b'Shabbat acher. You can't bring up the burnt offering of this Shabbos on a future Shabbos. In other words, if for some reason you weren't able to bring the Karban Musaf of Shabbos on this Shabbos, you would think maybe next week bring two. Says no. Avar yomo batel korbano. We don't like hearing these words so much. The day passed, the carbon is over. You didn't do it? Sorry, can't do it. So now let's understand, what would the halacha be about the Karban Tamid, the daily Karban? If somebody didn't, if the community didn't bring the Karban Tamid today, do they bring two tomorrow? Or do we say the day passed, the Karban passed? It would seem to be that from Shabbos, because the Torah tells us that Shabbos you can't bring next Shabbos too, we would seem to be that we could learn that would apply with all karbonis. As Rashi himself said, when the Torah says Olat Shabbat b'Shabbato, that the offering of Shabbos on its Shabbos, Rashi used the words Magid. This tells us that if the day passed, the carbon passed. In other words, it tells us a rule that we can seemingly apply for always. You can't bring it next Shabbos. However, it's difficult to say. So it would seem to be that maybe that would be the same halacha about the Karban Tamid. However, it's difficult to say that because a few psukim later, it says, Zot olat chodesh v'chodsho lechodshei hashana. Zot olat chodesh v'chodsho. That's the burnt offering of this chodesh, right? Has to be brought on the new month, Rosh Chodesh. Rashi says the same concept. If the day passed, if Rosh Chodesh passed, you missed it. And you didn't bring a carbon Rosh Chodesh, you can't bring it one afterwards. There's no replenishing it. From that we understand that this teaching that we learn on Shabbos, that if you missed it one Shabbos, you can't bring it the next Shabbos, does not apply to every sacrifice. If it did, why would the Torah need to tell us again by Rosh Chodesh? It should just, if it said it by Shabbos and it meant that every carbon is exactly the same, it's meant to be brought on this time. If you didn't bring it, you lost your chance. So why in Rosh Chodesh the Torah tells us again? More than that, about the Yamim Tovim, about the Chagim, about the holidays, it says again the same teaching. Devar Yom B'Yamo, it says in Parshas Emer, has to be every single day what that day needs. Rashi says, Im Avar Yomo, Batel Karbano. The day passed, can't make up that carbon. So even, in other words, it has to say it by Shabbos. It says it by Rosh Chodesh. It says it by Chagim. What about the daily? It doesn't say it. Doesn't say if you pass the day. So we could say, if now we look at this Rashi and say that Rashi is telling us that every single day is the time of that particular carbon of the day, what will we say? that maybe it's Rashi's telling us the same thing. It's not just every day has a carbon, and the kilo like it's just a constant daily carbon. No, every day it's the time of that carbon. If you missed it, can't do tomorrow. Maybe that's what Rashi's telling us. Same way that every Shabbos has its carbon. If you missed it, can't make up. Every day is the time of that carbon. You missed that carbon today, you can't make it up. 1 second. Paragraph 5. Ask the Rebbe, wouldn't you ask, why doesn't the Torah tell it to us? The Torah told it to us by Shabbos. It says, Olat Shabbat b'Shabbatot, it has to be the carbon of the Shabbos on its Shabbos. If it told it to us by Rosh Chodesh, told it to us by the Chagim, Dvar Yom B'Yomo, each day you have to bring the thing from that day. So why doesn't the Torah tell us by the Korban Tamid? If that's the halacha, you can't make it up the next day. Why doesn't the Torah tell us? You could say the reason the Torah doesn't tell it us by the daily because there's a big difference between the daily ones and the Shabbos ones. So the difference between the daily ones and Shabbos ones. In other words, you have to, what we call halt cup. You have to hold. We're opening up our brackets here. They were suggesting that maybe Rashi is telling us that b'chol yom mo'edhu, that every day is like the time of the Korban Tamid, just like the Shabbos has a time for the Musaf, and if you missed it, you can't bring it. Same thing with the daily. Its time is today. You missed today, you can't bring it tomorrow. You'll ask, why doesn't the Torah tell it to us the same explicitly, the same way it says it by Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Yom Tov? No, you would say maybe it doesn't need to say it explicitly. You know why? Because Shabbos and the holidays, the Chagim, their specialty is not as a result of the carbon. It's not that the special carbon of Shabbos creates a new reality that distinguishes Shabbos from the rest of the week. Shabbos is a holy day. And you're not allowed to work on Shabbos. Yom Tov is a holy day. Not allowed to work. They have the special mitzvahs of that Yom Tov. Besides for the fact that there's the specialty of the day, Shabbos you can't work, and on the Yom Tov, each Yom Tov has its specialty, there's also obligations to bring certain sacrifices on those days. But those days are not defined by the carbon. And even if you look, so there's a footnote, if you look in Pashas Emer and so on, before it gets to the carbonas, it says you have to bring the lulav and brings the mitzvahs of that day, right? So, but it's not that day is distinguished and created by the carbon. Because the day is a special day, it's a holiday, it's a Shabbos. There's also a special carbon. That's why, if I wouldn't have the teaching that tells me that if I miss the opportunity, if I miss bringing the carbon today, I can't bring it next week, I would think maybe you could. Why? Because it's not, if you told me that what makes this whole Shabbos is the carbon, so hello, once Shabbos passed, you didn't bring it, you missed it. It was making this Shabbos. You can't move it on next Shabbos. And if you say Shabbos is Shabbos on its own, the Shabbos also has an obligation of bringing a carbon. You didn't bring the carbon? Okay, the carbon is on standby. Bring it next Shabbos. So maybe I would think you could bring it next Shabbos. So the Torah has to tell me, no, you can't. The day passed, the carbon cancel out. When it comes to the daily one, I wouldn't think that you should be able to bring it on the next day. Why? Rashi says every day is the time of the constant carbon. In other words, the days are not, the Monday and the Tuesday are really not different than each other, except that there's an obligation of each day has a different carbon, a different constant carbon obligation. So one would understand that if that day passed, you can't bring the carbon because the specialty of Monday over Tuesday and over Wednesday over Thursday is that there's this carbon on Monday, there's this carbon, the same one, but the constant one. So this lamb that was supposed to be brought on Monday, it's not just incidental that the Monday is special because it's Monday, the Tuesday is special because it's Tuesday. Oh, you didn't bring the lamb. Okay, bring it on another day. That's not the main thing of the day. Really, when it comes to this carbon, the main excitement of the day, so to speak, is this carbon. You missed it on this day, forget about it. You don't need a special pasuk to tell you that. It's more self-understood.
אבל זה אותו כלל לכל השלושה סוגים.
No.
שבת, יום וחג.
The Rebbe is trying to create a distinction.
אבל זה בדיוק אותו מקרה, לא?
The Rebbe is trying to create a distinction that, for example, when it comes to Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, Korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, it says about it b'moado. Its time is the 14th of Nisan in the afternoon. Nobody ever had a dream that if you missed it, you could bring it another time. Hashem made a new mitzvah called Pesach Sheni, but that was not in the cards. That was not in anybody's understanding. Why? Because what distinguishes Pesach after 14th of Nisan in the afternoon is it becomes important only because of the korban. You missed it. A Shabbos is not special because of the korban. Shabbos is special because it's Shabbos. Together with that specialty, there's an obligation to bring a korban. So I may think, okay, the Shabbos was Shabbos with or without the korban. The korban still wasn't brought. Bring it next Shabbos. I may think that. Torah says, no, you can't. With the daily korban, the whole excitement of the day, the only thing that's unique and special about this day is that there was two lambs supposed to be brought up. And they were for that day. He didn't bring it. You can't bring it tomorrow. So that's why maybe that's why we don't need a pasuk. But Rashi's telling us that that's the fact. The answer as to why we don't need a pasuk is because I wouldn't, the pasuk only needs to come and say you can't bring it next Shabbos if I would maybe think you could. Here, Rashi is telling you...
זה בעצם לכאורה עוד יותר הפוך. פה אתה צריך לשים פסוק ושם, ברור שזה לא תחשוב. כי זה יומיומי. שבת אומר, טוב, זה פעם בשבוע, חודש.
Maybe.
כאילו הפוך.
Anyway, it's a subtle svara, so we really have to try it and think about it more, but Akoponim, that's what the Rebbe says. However, that's not a really good answer. Paragraph 6y, because it would make most sense to say that the first pasuk opening up in this week, the whole topic of karbonis, which says, my karbonis, you should make sure to bring it in its right time. You would expect that to be an introduction to all the karbonis that follow, the karbonis of Shabbos that follow, Rosh Chodesh, all the holidays, right? And you would expect that when the pasuk says, "V'amartem," tell them, this is my burnt offering, which I want you to bring up, that the whole slew of karbonis, the whole package of karbonis is starting with the daily one. And therefore the word b'moado, in its proper time, you would assume is going on all the karbonis, carbon of Shabbos, each one in its time. Except that Rashi says, "B'moado" also goes on the daily because each day is its time. But if these psukim are supposed to be an introduction for all the karbonis, so then we understand that the karbonis of Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh and Regalim, is not something separate to the karbonis. It's not like there's something like we tried to present before in the previous paragraph, that it's something subsidiary or ancillary or secondary to the day. Rather, it would seem to be that the specialty of the day is also, you can't do work, that's why Shabbos is special, but also one of the specialties of the day is the special carbon that you bring. And therefore, in other words, it should really be just the same as the daily carbon in terms of the connection of the carbon to the day. And if the Torah has to tell you about Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Regalim, the holidays, that if the day passed, you can't bring it, if that's what the Torah meant to tell us about the carbon tamid, the constant carbon, it should have said it openly. Which leads us, is going to take us to a very powerful opposite thought than what we said till now. You have the guts to say it? It's going to lead us to say that if Rashi doesn't say that if the day passed, the carbon passed, maybe it didn't. Maybe only where the Torah says it. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Regalim. Maybe Taka the daily one, Rashi doesn't say anything like that. Maybe you could. It's going to be a big chiddush. Let's see how the Rebbe gets there. Paragraph 7. So we can say the explanations like this. First, let's try and explain the different languages that we find by this carbon. By Shabbos, Rashi writes without any lengthy language, if you didn't bring the sacrifice on the Shabbos, I would think maybe Yakriv Shtayim L'Shabbat Haba, you should bring two, double. On the next Shabbos, Talmud Lama, the Torah says, B'Shabbato, in its Shabbos, which teach you, Magichi, Mavai, Yomo, Batel, Kabbanuv, the day passed, the carbon passed. Later, when it says about Rosh Chodesh, Rashi says it very concisely. Here, Rashi said about Shabbos, Rashi said it at length. About Rosh Chodesh, Rashi doesn't say, I would think maybe you can bring it next Rosh Chodesh if you forgot this. He just says it very clear, very quickly. Tells you that if the day passed, the carbon is lost. You can't replenish it. In earlier, when this halacha was talked about in terms of the Chagim, in Parshas Emer, Rashi says even shorter. The day passed, the carbon is lost. We can't make it up. So I can understand it by Rosh Chodesh, since just now the Torah says such a lengthy, so to speak, teaches the halacha in a more lengthy way about Shabbos, and a few verses after that comes the laws of Rosh Chodesh. I can understand by Rosh Chodesh. He doesn't have to say the arichus, the lengthy anymore, because he just said it by Shabbos. You already remember it, right? But when it comes to what he told us earlier in the Torah about Parshas Emer, why does he say it so short there? Why doesn't he say, if, like he says here about Shabbos? I would think that if you brought the karbonis, if you didn't bring the carbon this Chag, I would think you could bring it, let's say, next Pesach. Comes the Torah and says, no, you can't. Chag passed. Dvar yom b'yomo, every day for its day. Rashi doesn't say it at great length. Why not? So some Farshim say that by the regalim, by the Yomim Tovim, by the Chagim, you don't really need a very strong teaching to tell you that you can't bring this year's forgotten burnt offering on next Yom Tov. Why? Because obviously, if you forgot to bring the carbon on Pesach, you can't bring it on Shavuos. What's the connection between Pesach and Shavuos? Even maybe the carbonis are equal, but they're two totally separate holidays. However, from Shabbos to Shabbos, or from Rosh Chodesh to another Rosh Chodesh, they're the same day, same tochen, the same content of the day. That's where I would think.
What about Pesach to Pesach?
You're asking good. What about Pesach to Pesach?
It's not so close.
Well, we're going to talk about it in a second.
Yeah, Pesach Sheni, yeah.
We're going to talk about it in a second. So that would be why, that may be reason why those Mefarshim say that when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, Rashi says it lengthy. When it comes to the Chag, it's not such, it doesn't have to say it very lengthy. Just say if the Chag passed, you can't bring it, because we wouldn't really think you could, because when's the next Chag? Shavuos, you missed the Pesach. So if that's the case, where it says Dvar Yom Yoma each day in its proper time, talking about the holidays, Karbonis, it's really what it's saying is that you can't bring on one day of Yom Tov, if it had to be brought on the first day of Yom Tov, let's say the Musaf of the first day of Yom Tov, you can't bring on the subsequent days of Yom Tov. The question remains, though, just what you all asked now. Why don't we need the pasuk to tell us that if you didn't bring it this Pesach, you can't bring it next Pesach? Similarly, if you didn't bring it this Shavuos, you can't bring it next Shavuos. Yes, we said that the reason Rashi doesn't elaborate about you can't bring from one Chag to the next is because it could only be talking about the same Chag, first day, second day. So it's not a big issue. But it is a big issue. How do we know we can't bring this Pesach? If you forgot this Pesach to bring the carbon, how do you, the carbon Musaf of Pesach, for example, how do we know you can't bring it next Pesach? So we're going to have to find, we're still left with the question. Why is it? Big questions are, the Mo'ado, Rashi does not tell us that it means if you forgot today's, you can't make up for it tomorrow. Why not? Number two, in the other three places where we taught the halacha that you're not allowed to bring up a replacement carbon on Rosh Chodesh to next Rosh Chodesh, on Shabbos to next Shabbos, and on the Regalim next Regalim. Only the Rosh Chodesh one does it say it, only the Shabbos one does it say at great length. If you didn't bring on Shabbos, I may think you could bring to the next Shabbos. Comes the Torah and says, no, you can't. The other two incidents, Rosh Chodesh, okay, it doesn't say at length, but you could say because it follows right in the same part from Shabbos. But the Regalim it doesn't, which is a few parshas before, where we haven't yet had a lengthy introduction. It says even simply, Dvar Yom Yomo, each day it's carbon. Avar Yomo, Batel Kavano, the day passed, the carbon passed. Why so short? So let's try and weave all this together in one answer. Paragraph 8. So the explanation could be said as this. When we talk about tashlumin, we talk about replenishing, replacing a carbon that was forgotten, there's two ways. There's, first of all, that the person fulfills his obligation that he has been lacking. So I finished the day today and I say, oi, I forgot to bring the carbon that had to be brought today. I feel so bereft of this carbon. Can I bring it tomorrow to make up for my mistake? But there's another way of looking at this, and that is the chefza. The carbon was not brought. You say, oi, today's day looks so lacking. Forget about me, okay? I'm a forgetful guy. I'll deal with my problems. But I feel so bad for the day. The day is missing a carbon. So when we talk about replacing, what are we trying to replace? The carbon of the day or the oversight of me? Similar, Rabbi says in square brackets, which means it's similar, not exactly the same, but similar to the concept of paying back. If somebody stole something, there's a mitzvah, v'heishiv is agzelas v'gazal. He has to return the stolen thing that he stole. So if the stolen object is there, he stole a beam and the beam is still there, he gives the thing itself. And in this way, he fulfills the obligation to give back the stolen object. So the object, the chefza, the object is returned to where it's meant to be. If, however, somebody took the beam and made it into sawdust, so now the beam isn't there anymore. So the object cannot be returned. But now, obviously, there's still a possibility for the person to make restitution. The other guy is looking for his beam, he doesn't have it. Whoever took it can pay money for it. The beam he can't bring back, it's gone. If the beam is there, the korah. If the beam is there, give back the beam. The chef says give him back. If not, the only tashlumin you can do is the gavra. The person can make good. Similarly, it's not exactly the same, but similarly about the bringing up the carbonas, from the fact that every single carbon, every single sacrifice has its appointed time, we understand that the fulfillment of the mitzvah of offering up the carbon on this day, you can't do that by bringing it up on another day. In other words, it was meant to be brought on day one. You can bring it on day two, but day one isn't restored. And that's why Rashi says about the Tmidim that every day is its time. So how are you going to restore the carbon of today, tomorrow? It's time. This carbon, this sacrifice of Monday had a name tag month, so to speak, Monday. That was its time. You can't give it back to Monday. If Monday passed, you can't give it back. Similarly, all the carbonis about which it says b'moadot has to be brought in its proper time, it means it's attaching and hinging the carbon to that time, which means Shabbos has its musaf, Rosh Chodesh has its musaf, the Chagim have its musaf. So there's no way to think that if you've missed out bringing the musaf on Shabbos, that somehow you can be able to bring it on the next Shabbos. As the Torah says, you can't. Paragraph 9, but now the question remains, since in reality the carbon is here. Yes, we're saying I can't. It's a Monday carbon, I can't restore it to Monday. It's not Monday anymore, it's Tuesday. But when I go out into the backyard, I see that the Monday carbon, it's actually there. The lamb that was supposed to be brought is there. See, the Musaf of Shabbos, we had some lambs that were supposed to be brought as a carbon on Shabbos, and they're here. They're here. Right. Now, even if we didn't actually prepare the carbon, but the money for it is there. We have money. Everybody gave their half shekel. From that, we take the communal what's called carbonis, communal sacrifices. So now the reality is either there's a lamb or there's money for a lamb, and that's why. So maybe we should pay restitution, so to speak. In other words, even if I can't fix it because the Monday is already passed, but I can take that the lamb can be returned where it's supposed to be returned, not on Monday, on Tuesday, not this Shabbos, next Shabbos. That's why the Rashi says at great length about Shabbos. I would think if I didn't bring it on this Shabbos, maybe I should bring it next Shabbos. It's not that I'm trying to fix and restore that last Shabbos's Musaf will be miraculously restored. Maybe it won't be. But the animal that was still around, I would think maybe I should bring it next Shabbos because it's Shabbos. The animal belonged to Shabbos. So let me bring it next Shabbos on top of the new animal that's supposed to go on next Shabbos. So the Torah says no.
So what do you need to do with the lamb?
Magid. The Torah says Bishabbato. It has to be brought at that time. Magid, it tells you Shemavari Mo Batel Korbanov. The day past, the carbon is canceled. The whole mitzias, the whole reality of a carbon that belongs to that Shabbos isn't there anymore. Not just you don't have the mitzvah to bring it up to atone for previous Shabbos, but the whole carbon is bottled. You're asking what will happen to the actual animal. The actual animal is going to retain its kodesh status. It means batel kabbalah means you can use it for something else entirely.
But you can't use it for the next Shabbat?
No. Maybe you could even use it for the next Shabbos. But it loses its status as belonging to previous Shabbos. Just a regular lamb.
לא עד עכשיו אמרנו שאי אפשר לעשות את זה? שאי אפשר לקחת משבת לשבת?
We didn't say you can't take for Shabbos to Shabbos. We're trying to say, can you restore last Shabbos? Can you make up last Shabbos by bringing an extra one this Shabbos? So we said you can't, because the Shabbos is missing. But we said, but there is, maybe it's not an actual kevis, but in concept. In concept, there's a lamb or money for a lamb that's still here that wasn't used. I would think maybe at least I can take that commodity and bring it next Shabbos. The Rabbi says no. Batel korbanot. It's as if it doesn't exist anymore. You had money for a lamb. It's not there anymore. You'll have extra money left in the coffers. You'll do what you do with extra money. What do you do with extra money? You bring olot lekayit samizbeach. You bring extra korbanot. And this you also is going to be the halacha about Rosh Chodesh and about the Chagim. As we said, avar yamo b'takavlo. Comes to the carbon tummy, to the daily carbon, even though every day is moed hatimimim, it's the day of the time of the tmidim. There's no thought, there's no kasal kadata, there's no even a possibility of thought that you should be able to fulfill yesterday's missed carbon with bringing another one today. Tomorrow is not the time, not moado. But we can't make up for yesterday. But what about that extra carbon or the extra money that's waiting that wasn't brought yesterday? Maybe that I can make up by doing two tomorrow. It doesn't say about that. Rashi never brings, and the Medrash never brings avar yomo batel korbano. Avar yomo, it says you missed b'moado, you missed its time. So if I miss the Monday carbon, Monday will always be missing the carbon. But is the carbon batel? What about that carbon that was supposed to be brought? Can I bring it in addition to the Tuesday carbon? Can I bring the Monday carbon? Maybe. We didn't say batel carbon. So the Rebbe comes with a big chiddush. Al pi pshuto shel mikra. Doesn't have to be according to halacha. You could say that Rashi, when he learns the simple reading of the pasuk, comes out with a maskana. Maybe it could be that you could bring the tummy the next day, because you have the reality. You have the reality of the carbon. You know, the Rebbe brings an interesting Rambam. The Rambam says in the laws of Tmidim and Musafim, ve'einam chayavim lahakriv hashar lamachar or lamoed acher. If you missed it, you're not obligated to bring it the next day. Ela kol korban tzibur shavar zmano batel korbano. Every korban tzibur, the day time passed, the korban was bottled. But when the Rambam used the words einam chayavim, sounds like maybe there's some angle to say, because it doesn't say explicitly batel korbano, maybe you are allowed to bring it. So,
They're not having, but they can.
Mhm.
If they want, they can do it.
We don't know. Maybe Rebbe is proposing that could be Pshuto Shel Mikra, and could be the Rambam is alluding to it. Could be they could. So 1 second. Now let's understand. So about Shabbos, Rashi says it at length. He says, I would think maybe I should bring the leftover that I didn't bring this Shabbos to bring it on next Shabbos. We just explains what the rationale behind that. Because even though I know the Shabbat B'Moado, I can't make up the Shabbos. But maybe at least I can fix those missing lambs and bring them. So that's ba'arichut. When it comes to the regalim, there's no arichut. It just says batel yomo batel kabano. It doesn't say. I would think maybe. Why? Why doesn't he go through that whole logic also? Maybe I can make up at least give those animals. You know why?
But you won't hold
Because it's
benefit.
next year.
Yeah, for 1 year.
Because the shkalim, the half shekels of every year were for the korbanos of that year. So next year it's going to be different shekels, as Rashi already told us earlier. The Ben Chamish Lemekar know this because it says Natnu kol echad machzishat shekel v'hein liknot mimenem korban tzibur shekol shana v'shana. We already said in Parshat Ki Tisa that the half shekel is to buy the communal korbanos every year. So there would be no svara, there would be no thought to even say that you could bring, that if you didn't bring the Pesach, korbanos. So I can't fix Pesach, we know that, but I would think maybe I should still use that money, so to speak, or
Keep the money.
and give it next year. No, but next year I can't keep it from year to year.
Why not?
It's not going to fix because every year I have to use the new ones. The leftover money
So what is the
doesn't go over. You bring extra karbonis. There's karbonis that's called lekayit samizbeach, keeps the mizbeach busy. You don't roll over the money. The surplus doesn't go over to the next year. So Mela we have here, we've just answered the whole concept. Rashi says moed, b'chol yom moed atmimim, and that tells us you can't make up what you didn't do today because don't just think. Every day he wears, I'm just going to give a wild example. Every day he wears the same white shirt, same shirt. No, there's a Monday shirt, there's a Tuesday shirt, there's a Wednesday shirt. If he couldn't find his Monday shirt, he's not going to wear that on Tuesday. Tuesday he wears his Tuesday shirt. Every day it's its proper time. You see, like, it all looks the same to me. No, it's not the same. Every Korban Tamid has its time. You missed it today. Sorry, you can't bring it tomorrow. But Rashi doesn't say Batel Korbano, which leads the Rebbe to say maybe the Korban is not Batel. You can't make it up because you missed the time, but maybe you should still be giving that animal. Maybe. And could be a Vipshuta Shemika, you should. We don't know.
But it's with the money of the.
It's the money in the half shekel.
Yeah, so what, you sell it and you get the money back?
No, maybe you should use it.
Maybe
Bring it the next day.
As different sacrifice, not that.
Yeah, okay. If we say Avar Yomo Batel Korbano, if you didn't bring it this Shabbos.
It's not that it's someone take it home.
No,
It cannot be like that, yes?
course
No.
Yud, paragraph 9. Now we're going to learn a lesson, Yeina Shel Torah, from the wine of Torah that we can get from this Rashi. We know that the Hashra'at HaShechina, the resting of the Shechina on the Beis HaMikdash, and similarly the entire world, was through the Karbanos, through the sacrifices. And we understand that in every kind of sacrifice is connected with another kind of nuanced resting of Hashem Shechina in the world. In other words, each carbon brings down a certain flavor, so to speak, level of the Shechina's presence. Similarly, when we talk about the Karbanos in our Parsha, we have the constant ones, the Korban Tamid, which are brought every day. Then we have the Shabbos ones, we have the Rosh Chodesh ones, we have the holiday ones. They're generally connected with two kinds of Kedusha that we talk about in the world. the additional karbanos, like the musaf of Shabbos and Chodesh and so on, their kedusha that they bring down converts the time. In other words, these karbanos impact the day so that the day itself becomes a much holier day in a revealed way. However, the fact that the kedusha, that this holiness is so powerful, it impacts and totally reworks and transforms the day that it's brought into a holy day. It tells you also that there's some kind of a limitation. In other words, it's a kind of Shekhinah, it's the holiness that comes down and is able and is attached to a particular day. It's not a constant. The Korban Tomid is a constant. In other words, there's no limitations as to which day, where it can reach, what day it can impact. We understand, therefore, that this is a higher level. It's coming from a level of Kedusha where change and different cannot be even discussed. In other words, it's a more unlimited kind of light that's able to change the constant, not just impact with holiness a particular day and make it holy. And that's why Itaka every day is not a Yom Tov. If the carbon brings down a holiness, so why does the Shabbos carbon bring down and make the day forbidden to work and the daily? What about the daily sacrifice? No, because it's such a powerful light. It has to do with the level of Hashem about which it says, Ani Hashem lo shaniti, I'm Hashem who has not changed. Creation doesn't change me. So it's higher than time. It doesn't collide with time and try and change it. So you may think, paragraph 11, that 1 second, if it's higher than time, maybe it stays aloof and it doesn't really impact our world. So the Torah says no. This high level of holiness that comes in the constant way and seems to remain aloof from time, actually it's moed. Each day is its time. Even though we're talking about a constant, the level of Shekhinah which is constant, and it's higher than change, but it's not pshat. We're not trying to say that it doesn't have an impact on the time it comes. But what we're saying, every day is its time. In other words, the day becomes impacted and different because of the sacrifice of the tummy that's brought. However, it's not in an open way. It doesn't transform the way in an open way. So really what that tells us is that this carbon tumid has a joining of two powers. It has a tumid, it's above time. And on the other hand, b'moado, it comes and impacts the particular time. What does that mean for us? Higher than time and impacting time. Paragraph 12. The concept about this in serving Hashem, when a Jew has his service of Hashem in a way of tamid, in a way of constant, that means that there's no fluctuation, no differences, no ups and downs in his avodah, in the service of Hashem. A weekday, and a Shabbos and Yom Tov, and a Yom Kippur, wherever day he's in, whatever kind of stage he's at, and whatever kind of level of service of Hashem he's doing, he understands one thing. It's tamid. It's amarti v'nasa. It's only Hashem has said, and we did His will. It's Yom Kippur. It's Hashem's will. It's a regular Wednesday. It's Hashem's will. That kind of equanimity where it's all the same to me because all I'm interested in, the only thing that consumes me, my passion is doing what Hashem wants. If Hashem wants Yom Kippur, now I'll do Yom Kippur. If Hashem wants Wednesday, I'll do Wednesday. Because the person is at the stage where he's able to feel that Ani Hashem lo shaniti. I am Hashem, so I haven't changed. He's able to transcend and reach a place where all the differences don't make any difference to him because he's at one singular desire to serve Hashem. That's what Rashi is saying, if we look at it from these Hasidic lenses. So Rashi is saying that through the service of Tamidim, of the daily sacrifice, every day becomes a moed, every day becomes a holiday. Every day is special. There's no just regular mundane weekday. Every day is a day where you can get closer to Hashem. Every day we have a Korban Tamid. Each day it impacts the time. Through living in that way, where every day is an expression of connection to Hashem, we fulfill what Hashem wants from us in His ultimate intention, that Hashem should have a dira b'tachteinim, should have a dwelling place here in the lower worlds. In other words, we bring the holiness of the days into the time of the year, not in a special time of the year, but in every single day of the year, and that speeds up the blessing that we're going to have. That Shabbos is going to be every day. Every day is going to be Yom Shekolo Shabbat Menucha Yomim. Every day is going to be like Shabbos. What does it mean? When there's a Gilu, when Mashiach comes, the specialty of every day will be apparent, because every day is an opportunity to serve Hashem. Now there's two tiers. Some days are Yom Kippur, some days are regular Wednesday. But when you reach a true level, there's just one thing: serving Hashem. Anyway, there's so this is the Korban Tamid in the lens of Hasidic thought.